State of Ohio versus Briana Diane Dutcher.
This 18-year-old girl is accused of orchestrating the murder of her own mom.
There is a possible suspect on foot in the area, armed and dangerous. 55-year-old female, shot near the eye.
Police say the college-bound teen initially told them she didn't know much. But then comes the cell phone data, the text messages, and the deleted text messages that now...
All my sister ever wanted out of life was a baby. That single line from a grieving family member sits at the center of this case. And when you place it next to what prosecutors just laid out in open court, it does something strange. It turns a murder charge into a house of mirrors.
Guys, I can't believe the text messages I'm about to show you today. Conversations between a boyfriend and the daughter of the victim that allegedly show they were planning the girl's mom's murder in a cold-blooded crime. And you'll see those messages for you. We'll put them up on the screen here in just a moment. This is a case involving an 18-year-old girl, Briana Dutcher, but it's also involving her mom, who lost her life last week in a shooting at her home outside of Columbus. This mom's name was Tamila Dutcher, and a family member we saw wrote that all that Tamila ever wanted in life was a baby. And they say that Tamila gave Briana everything in her life.
The victim spent her life studying violent adolescents. The accused is her own daughter, and the evidence that broke the case was never supposed to exist. Here is the visual anchor for everything that follows. Imagine a woman standing in a dark kitchen. The floor is wet. She has been shot near the eye. Her husband rushes toward her body. And at that exact second, according to the criminal complaint, a second shot rings out. The target is him. That moment is not just a crime scene. It is a snapshot of a family detonating from the inside. The shooter is still unidentified. The motive is allegedly a fight over household chores. The person accused of setting it in motion is the 18-year-old daughter standing somewhere in that same house.
Of what happened to Briana's mom and the violence that took place in their home in the middle of the night last week. But I want to talk about what happened that night. We have some dispatch chatter I want you to listen to from the early morning hours of August 14th. Here it is.
Shooting. Engine 321, Medic 321, and Battalion 321.
So that's the call that goes out to emergency responders to rush to this home in Delaware County, Ohio. It's not far from Columbus. This is all taking place just after midnight. When police get to the house, they found Tamila Dutcher, and she had a gunshot wound to her head.
You're going to stage for DCSO. There is a possible suspect on foot in the area, armed and dangerous. 55-year-old female, shot near the eye. She is still breathing. They're trying to put pressure.
Now, the details that we have in a criminal complaint make what allegedly happened to this mom and her husband, by the way, nothing short of cold-blooded. And this is what I mean. The complaint states that Evans and Payne come into the home and they allegedly fire a shot at Tamila and they hit her in the face. Now, Tamila's husband is a man who's been identified as Neil King. He comes over to help his wife. I mean, she is on the ground fighting for her life. And in that moment, police also allege that Evans and Payne fired a second shot at Neil King. Fortunately, they missed.
Before we go deeper into what the documents actually show, make sure you are subscribed to Trial Theory Unsealed, because we do not just cover the story. We follow the evidence. The State of Ohio versus Briana Diane Dutcher. That is the caption on the docket. The defendant is a recent high school graduate. She ran track competitively. She had committed to run at Ohio Wesleyan University. The Instagram account reportedly titled OW Class of 2030 has since been deleted. That detail is small.
Who truly had so many advantages in life, from an education standpoint to the support it appears she was getting from her family. And you just have to wonder, how does it go in this direction? I mean, Briana was a recent graduate of the local high school there in Delaware County, and we have multiple records that show that she was a competitive track runner. She was planning to run in college. According to WSYX, she had committed to run track at Ohio Wesleyan University. That is a prestigious private college, not far from Columbus, and in sports, they're Division III. And there was some sort of post it seems, of her committing to run track at the school that has been deleted from an account that was titled OWU Class of 2030, which is on Instagram. Now, at the time of this recording, we do not have a picture of Briana's mom, the victim in this case. It does appear that Tamila Dutcher kept a relatively low profile. But what we did find is it appears she worked as a psychologist. In 2002, it also appears that she wrote a paper that is now incredibly shocking to look at in hindsight, considering what police say happened 24 years later. That paper was titled, "The Violent, Homicidal Adolescent, Hearts Darkened Before Time." And the description of the paper is, quote, "The problem of adolescent violence and homicide continues to be one of the most urgent and difficult problems facing clinicians and agencies that provide service to youth." The article describes research-based typologies and adolescent murderers. And so many years later, I mean, she wrote this in 2002, talked about
But
how
it matters, because this case is built almost entirely on what gets deleted and what gets recovered. Prosecutors say Dutcher initially told law enforcement she did not know who else could have been inside the home. Then she admitted her boyfriend Christian Evans and his roommate Dejamius Payne were there. But she denied seeing anything. She denied being involved.
Weren't the only ones on scene. You had Tamila's 18-year-old daughter, Briana. She was there too, and police are alleging she knew exactly what was going on. In fact, she was in on it, they say.
The defendant initially denied knowing anybody who else could have been there. She finally admitted to law enforcement on Friday that Mr. Evans and Mr. Payne were there, but she denied being involved or seeing what had happened inside the house.
Now, as we see in so many cases we cover, cell phone data can hold the truth, and that appears to be what prosecutors think in this case. And if you think a deleted text message can't be found, you would be wrong.
There have now been text messages that have been recovered from her phone that appear to be planning the crime in advance. I would note for the court that the messages were deleted from her phone, but they were recovered by law enforcement during a forensic download. So certainly the state has concerns about her attempted destruction of that evidence, in addition to her text messages indicating unawareness and knowledge and participation in the murder offense.
So
Then came the forensic download of her phone. Deleted text messages came back. And that is where the official narrative of confusion and innocence collapsed. Here is the first hard turn in the case. The probable cause affidavit describes a fight on Thursday. It was over cleaning, household chores. That was allegedly the entire spark. Shortly after, Dutcher began texting Evans. He responded with what prosecutors say is a direct line. Quote, "If I were you, I would have killed her." End quote. Now, one line can be dismissed as teenage rage, but what follows is not a figure of speech. According to police, the messages include Evans telling Dutcher they need to be hidden once they both pass away, just in case. He also says she should get a gun. Dutcher allegedly responds with the layout of the house. She says she is in the living room. He is in the basement. "Let me know when you are here." Evans says getting ready, then gloves. Then take them both at the same time. Dutcher answers, "I got it." Evans says this has to be perfect. Dutcher replies, "I will just take them down." Evans asks how. The next messages are fragmented, shoes in the rain, forensics. Then the final exchange. "How close are you to doing this? River or burn?" Then Evans says, "Come outside and grab the Browning."
So WBNS has these text messages. They lay them out from the probable cause affidavit, and this is what they reportedly say. I will note it is unclear in what order and what times these messages were sent. But according to police, Christian texts Briana they need to be hidden once they both pass away, just in case. Christian also says, "I also believe you should also get a gun too." Now, these are text messages. They are not the most complete sentences. Now, Briana also responds, and she says, "Air, she's living room, he's basement, where you're here, LMK, let me know." Now, Christian to Briana, "We're getting ready." Briana to Christian, KK. Christian to Briana, "Getting gloves." Christian also says they need to be hidden once they both pass away. Take them both at the same time. Briana to Christian, "I got it." Christian to Briana, "This has to be perfect." Briana to Christian, "I'll just take them down." Christian to Briana, "How?" Briana to Christian, yeah, will actually help. Christian to Briana, shoes in the rain and all. Christian to Briana, you know about forensics and everything, right? Christian to Briana, how close are you to doing this? Briana to Christian, river or burn. Christian to Briana, come outside and grab the Browning.
Those messages are the prosecution exhibit that changed the charge from obstruction of justice to murder. The moral refrain in this case is simple. The phone remembers, because every deleted message became a roadmap. Every tap of the screen became a timestamp. Every word became a witness. The phone remembers, and that is why the state is treating this not as an accident, but as a premeditated plan. Now here is the narrative irony that is almost impossible to ignore. The victim in this case was not a random person. She was Dr. Tamila Dutcher. She worked as a psychologist. In 2002, she wrote a paper titled Violent, Homicidal Adolescent Hearts, Darkened Before Time. The description addressed the urgent problem of adolescent violence and homicide. She wrote about the typologies of adolescent murderers. She studied the exact profile now assigned to her own daughter. That is not evidence. It is not proof. But it is a brutal parallel. The scholar of youth violence died in a case alleging youth violence inside her own home.
Only once in a blue moon do we see that actually turn into a murderous plot because of some disagreement with the parents. And it makes it even more curious that some reports suggest that Dr. Dutcher had authored a paper 20 years ago on this notion of adolescents killing their family members, and that female teenagers, girls, are more likely to do that. If that's true, that's certainly a cruel irony for this case. But you're right. Based on this defendant, it's hard to see even a Delaware County jury wanting to give the death penalty. That's probably going to be factored into the charging decision.
And this is where the ticking clock moment arrives. If the forensic recovery of deleted messages is now so advanced that a teenager cannot erase her own plan, then the real thriller is not what prosecutors know today. It is what they will find tomorrow. Because in the hours between the shooting and the arrests, Evans and Payne allegedly fled to West Virginia and then returned to Ohio. How many other devices crossed state lines in that window? How many other deleted files are sitting in cloud backups? The question is not whether the state has enough evidence. The question is how much evidence is still finding its way back to the surface.
Yeah, you and I and other hosts on Law and Crime, we talk about cases all around the country in maybe smaller, more rural counties with less resources. That's not Delaware County. Delaware County is one of the fastest growing counties in Ohio. It's particularly wealthy. There's a lot of resources. They've got an outstanding sheriff. They've got a tremendous prosecutor in Melissa Schiffel. She's got her top criminal assistant, Mark Sleeper, on point on this. The Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation is doing the investigation. This is the state's version of the FBI. They're pros. They know what they're doing. So there won't be many mistakes the way we saw perhaps in the Alec Baldwin case in New Mexico, where the case had to be abandoned because of some prosecution mistakes. I think this will be handled professionally. They may not need to offer a deal to any of these defendants.
The court record adds another layer. The judge set bond at $3 million for Dutcher. Her attorney argued she was 18 with no criminal record and substantial community ties.
Now, this is what Briana's attorney told the court.
Dutcher is 18 years old. First and foremost, she acknowledges the severity of these allegations, but allegations nonetheless. She's presumed innocent. She has absolutely zero criminal record, Your Honor, no history of avoiding arrest, eluding prosecution, nothing like that. We submit that she poses absolutely zero flight risk, that there are less restrictive alternatives that the court may consider and impose, including house arrest, to mitigate against any perceived or hypothetical flight risk. No history of violence, nothing of the sort. All her ties are here in Delaware County, substantial ties in the community where I believe she was born and raised. And we submit to you, Your Honor, that the $3 million bond requested by the state far exceeds what is necessary to meet the principles and purposes of bond. Thank you, sir.
The state pointed to the deleted messages. The defense pointed to her clean history. The judge sided with the state. $3 million. House arrest. GPS monitoring. No contact with co-defendants. The system is treating her as a flight risk and a public safety concern. That does not mean she is guilty. It means the court
That
read the
soft,
same text.
whimpering voice. She's now accused of playing a key role in the murder of her own mom.
Dutcher, when the court's to consider how to set bond in a case, the factors the court considers, just some of the factors, are the nature and circumstances of the alleged offense, the severity or the level of the offense, criminal history of the defendant, if any, risks of public safety, as well as looking at comparable cases in an effort to be consistent. And of course, those are just some of the factors the court considers. So I've considered those factors in this case, as well as arguments made on behalf of the state, as well as arguments made on behalf of your counsel. Certainly the nature and circumstances of the offense, the level of the alleged offense, weigh in favor of bond, risks of public safety. I would also note for the record that no history of criminal convictions or criminal history. The court did also look at comparable cases, including bond set in this case with your co-defendants, as well as other cases similarly situated here in the county. What the court is going to do is the court is going to set bond in the form of a $3 million cash surety or real estate bond, again based on the factors the court outlined.
There is one more twist that the public record has not resolved. Police have indicated they do not yet know who fired the fatal shot. The gun was reportedly brought by Evans. The trigger puller remains unidentified. But under Ohio complicity law, that may not matter. If you plan it, if you provide the layout, if you tell someone to come inside and take them down, you can be charged as if you pulled the trigger yourself.
It just made a strong case even stronger. Years ago, decades ago, before text messages, you'd have the husband of the victim as the eyewitness who could tell you what happened. You'd have one defendant probably testifying against the other in exchange for a lesser penalty. But now we have these text messages which can show the intent, show the planning, and makes these charges much more serious. And I know this county well. I've been a special prosecutor in this county twice. I've sat as an acting judge in their municipal court. I know all the players on law enforcement side.
That is why the murder charge attaches to all three defendants equally. The phone remembers, and the law remembers too.
When they're needed, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a grand jury indictment very quickly on this. They could move forward by way of information, but more typically they're going to want to get grand jury to hand up the appropriate charges, and then we will get a trial schedule. Unless these defendants waive their speedy trial rights, the trial has to be held within 90 days because they are in custody, and so the speedy trial clock is faster than if you're bonded out. These defendants are not going to bond out. I think it's a $3 million bond. They're not going to bond out. They're going to stay in. So either the defense counsel will waive speedy trial, or they will file a motion to suppress or some other motion which will toll or pause the statute, the speedy trial statute.
And just lastly, and you kind of go to that article, it appears that Dr. Dutcher had written all the way back in 2002, like a paper looking at the issue of adolescence, homicide. Sadly, we've talked about several cases involving people in this age group that, in these moments, and in this case, if what police say are true, it's like the friction of a teenager and her mom, and it's the teen love with somebody that then ends up in this direction that is just so incredibly awful. Like, just in your work as a prosecutor, and this is the question that Dr. Dutcher was trying to figure out. We always ask it, and everyone's trying to figure out the answer. But what is it about some of these teen homicide suspects where things that seem so minuscule for us on the outside, it gets to this point where we're talking about, all three of these individuals, 21 years old, 20 years old, and 18 years old, there's the potential they'll never get out of prison for the rest of their life, depending on how this plays out.
Yeah, I've been informed on this topic by a variety of things. Maybe unlike you, Chris, I started out as a foolish teenager. I never shot anybody, but I did a lot of
I was right there with you. Yeah, I was right there with you.
Yeah, made my mother shake her head and wonder why. And so we know just historically that the human brain doesn't fully form until you're in your mid-20s. And so teenagers are already sort of bundles of hormones and emotions. Then lately they're informed by social media, which will fuel some of these thoughts. I read one account where this young woman, the daughter, suggests that she thinks her parents were racist, and perhaps that's the reason why she would need to kill them. There are subsets of the internet that will fuel such a delusion, and maybe even fuel her to the point where she feels she needs to kill them. And so we have the typical teenage, unstable mental thing that's part of being a teenager as you're growing up. And then you have social media making it worse. And then there's just the factor of evil. We can't ignore that. Some people are willing to take evil acts. It's a small subset of the population who's ever willing to kill somebody else. But we should take notice that does exist and it needs to be addressed.
Yeah, it's just like, I mean, even as a parent myself, the idea, you just, think of Tamila Dutcher, and she, gives birth to this baby. She loves this baby. This baby turns 18 years old. And then one family member wrote, just stuck with me. It was like, you just hope that, as she passed away, she did not know.
A family member posted a final thought. I just hope that her mother did not know when she died on that kitchen floor that her daughter was part of her murder. That is the emotional center of the entire case. Not the forensic technology, not the text messages. The question of whether a mother spent her final seconds knowing the person she gave everything to had allegedly helped end her life.
Payne and Evans cannot have any contact with the victim's family, according to the court. But kind of an interesting note coming out of that hearing is that Briana is allowed to have phone contact with the victim's family, which is, of course, her family as well. And that was at their request. An attempted murder charge could also be filed in this case related to that gunshot that was allegedly fired at Tamila's husband, Neil King. Now, before I get to Mark Weaver and we talk about what could happen next, I want to share this social media post that I started the show with. It's from a family member, a woman who identified herself as Tamila's sister. And it really just sums up the tragedy that we're talking about here. It says, quote, "I still cannot wrap my head around this. Her own daughter, my niece. She was given everything in this entire world. All my sister ever wanted out of life was a baby. I just hope that her mother did not know when she died on that kitchen floor that her daughter was part of her murder." Of course, all the
Now
suspects...
go look at the Delaware County Court of Common Pleas public docket. Find the probable cause affidavit. Read the exact wording of the deleted messages. Then come back and answer this one question. At what point in that text thread does a conversation stop being teenage fantasy and become a murder conspiracy? Because the answer may be one message earlier than you think. If this breakdown helped you see the case differently, share it. Subscribe to Trial Theory Unsealed and turn on notifications. We follow the evidence every single time.